where he says you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. And I love that one too, because, you know, when I'm working with somebody and real estate is a brand new thing for them, they really feel like they can't take that first step until they see what's on step 10 because they're terrified. And I just kind of encourage them, and whether it's real estate or anything else that you aspire to, just travel as far as you can see. And when you get there, you'll see further, right? So just take the first step. If you take the first step, you know how much easier step 2 is from step 1 than step 0? Like,
step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. This is going to be a fun one today with Matt Theriault of Epic Real Estate. We were just talking before we jumped on that you are a fifth-generation California native. You're no longer in California, but we are very familiar with the same areas. A beautiful place called the South Bay outside of Los Angeles. So, Matt, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to dive in.
Appreciate it. My pleasure.
Yeah. So let's just talk about your business, how you got into it, what you're trying to help people solve, and what you're trying to bring into the world. And I know you have a lot of other things going on. I love that you call yourself just an ordinary guy who had a goal.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
It's kind of great. I say that because, you know, I launched this YouTube channel, 11, 12 years ago. And it was like, there wasn't a whole lot of intention behind it. I was just releasing videos. And I remember one day, someone in the comments, just another dumb guru. And I was like, guru? Is that what I am? Like, it was the first time I'd ever. So I was like, no, I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm not a guru by any means. But anyway, yeah, my company is Epic Real Estate. And what we do is we show busy professionals, struggling professionals, how to build a real estate portfolio, either in their spare time or eventually full time, so that they can retire early. And I run the business with my wife. And so I'm more of teaching the hands-on and how to. And she does much more of like what we call our done for you service. It's a turnkey operation.
Oh, nice.
So she'll go out and she'll find the properties and she'll fix them up. She'll put a tenant in place, coordinate the property management, coordinate the financing, and just hand it over on a silver platter as a cash producing asset to those types that don't have the time or the desire to do all the heavy lifting. So that's what we do.
Yeah. One of my biggest regrets was when I got divorced, selling our entire real estate portfolio that I was managing. And I got my husband funded a little bit, but then I was able to turn it into a much bigger play, get a great line of credit. We had real estate in 3 states, and I just really loved doing that. But then, so I see where you're coming from, and I do think that real estate is an excellent way to build up wealth and build a portfolio. But how did you get into this in the first place?
It was not in the plans, for sure. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years of my life in the music business and did really well for myself. And then one day, this thing called the digital download, Napster. Do you remember this?
Yes. Yes.
Came along and it turned the whole industry upside down. It changed completely the way that people consume music. I mean, we used to walk into stores and walk up and down the aisles and dig through bins and read liner notes and, smell the vinyl and all that kind of stuff. But when that all changed and people just started downloading stuff for free, it pretty much put me out of business in about 6 months.
Wow.
And at the time, I mean, we had no idea what was happening. In hindsight, it's crystal clear what happened. But at the time, we had a small independent hip hop label. And we had major label distribution, so we were doing really well. But that independent audience that liked independent music, whether it was rock, dance, or hip hop, whatever, they just embraced technology and the download way before the general population did. And we were completely out of business before iTunes was even a thing. That wasn't even invented yet. And so
this is another connection point. I started out as a club promoter and throwing events, and I remember the days of mixtapes and vinyl. We still have a garage full of vinyl and 2 turntables and all of that. So we are still lovers of that format. And I think it's making a comeback. But yeah, I mean, this digital revolution, the ability to download and stream and, Now at least it's monetized. It's not just people ripping music as much, but
Yeah.
I can see how that could put you out of business really quickly.
Well, I'm the label owner, so I'm the
Yeah.
one who produced or put up the money to produce the music, and then I manufactured the compact discs and the albums. And then when people stop buying those, then I guess you don't need a record label anymore. They're still out there. I don't know how they make the money, and I don't know what the business model is, but we certainly didn't figure it out in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the age of 34 when all that went down, and my wife left me. She didn't appreciate the money stopped coming in, and then filed bankruptcy, and that was 2001. And went out, and I guess I got to get a job. There wasn't a whole lot of demand out there for an out of work entertainment entrepreneur. And so I quickly was told by the market that there wasn't a whole lot of value that I brought to the table
Oh,
because, I just did music my whole life and I didn't go to college. I mean, I in and out, but I didn't have a degree or certifications or anything like that every job was asking for. And so I tried all kinds of things. I went to go sell insurance and I hated that. I went to sell cars for a very short period of time. That was terrible. I hopped around from multi-level marketing company to multi-level marketing company, and that was exhausting. And ended up right there in Manhattan Beach, your stomping grounds at the Ralph's right there. I was bagging groceries at the age of 34 at that Ralph's. And that was quite the humbling experience. And just, it was like the world's worst, biggest pity party. I blamed everyone and everything for my situation. And just life was not fair, is how I felt. And I was there for about 6 months. And I just kind of woke up. I was like, wow, 6 months flew by. And if I don't do something, I might be here for the rest of my life, which
yeah.
was really scary. And I realized that no one was coming to rescue me. So I was an adult. I was a functioning person of society, and I had to put my big boy pants on. But fortunately, the grocery store manager, who was also 34, we had a lot in common. We were the same age. But I was pushing the carts, and he was managing the store. And he'd been there since he was 16 years old. So he's born and raised in the South Bay. And he was 2 years away from his 20-year anniversary. And we were talking about that. And he told me that, Matt, at 20 years, I'll be able to withdraw 70% of my salary for the rest of my life as my pension. He says, but look what I've done along the way. I bought a couple apartment buildings, and they're over there in, one was in Hawthorne and one was in Torrance. Mm-hmm. And he says, the cash flow from these apartment buildings is going to pay me more than my pension. And so at 38, he was done. And I was like, wow. And he said these words to me, and I've said them 1,000 times since. And so here's 1,001 times now. But he said, real estate, it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth. And I was just remember those words and, at a point where I had no idea what I was going to do next. And he said, it's the final frontier. I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder I couldn't find it because I was looking in the wrong place. The second thing was we're the average person. And I was like, oh my God, I'm bagging groceries at the age of 34. I'm far below average. Who am I to aspire above that? And then it said create real wealth. And that was a key thing because I really missed my money from the music business. And so that night I punched out, grabbed a bottle of wine, went home and started Googling everything. I think it was Yahoo at that time. And I found an estranged aunt just a couple cities over. She lived in Long Beach. And she was the number one agent there for like 26, 27 years. I hadn't talked to her in probably 15, 16 years. And so I was filled with liquid courage at that moment. And I fired off an email and she responded in the morning. We had lunch that day. And then I think within 24 hours, I was in real estate agent school.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how the real estate whole thing started. It happened just like that.
Yeah. And what was that like transitioning? I mean, you'd had successful business before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you're able to take those skills in and kind of maybe make some shortcuts, figure out some ways to engage really quickly.
I definitely took some lessons with me for sure. I don't even know I guess to other people, the outside looking in, I might have had skills, but I was never really taught business. I didn't go anywhere to learn how to do it. It was just grit, right? Yeah. And just kind of common
determination,
principles.
organic. Yeah. Learning the hard lessons on the way. I think that's the way that's the way I did it as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm still learning lessons, but it's great because I'm still excited and enthusiastic about what I'm going to do next. And,
right.
You have to stay in that mindset.
Yep. And, it was just kind of the golden rule was kind of the basis of my whole business philosophy. And then just get up and work hard every day. So that was that. And then after about 3 or 4 years of being an agent, I just kind of had this epiphany. I had a couple clients that were investors. And they were the best clients. If you're an agent, you know that you love repeat business, right? And so they just kept on giving me deals and faxing stuff over. Do you remember what a fax machine is?
I do.
But
I do. Yeah.
they'd fax over offers, they'd fax over their listings. And I remember there was one Saturday, I was working in PV at the time now in Palos Verdes, the Remax place right at the top of the hill. And I remember they came in, it was 10:30. We had an appointment at 10:30 on Saturday, and they were about 20 minutes late. I was in my suit and tie like I always was. I had all of their documents and paperwork on the desk, wait for them to sign. And they showed up 20 minutes late in jeans and a t-shirt. They signed everything and then took off for the weekend. And then I was stuck there to process their paperwork and then hold their house open. And it was like, you know what? I think if this is where all the money's at, I'm just sitting on the wrong side of the desk. And I started looking and comparing my commissions to their profits. And I was like, you know what? I want to do that. So that's where that was a kind of transition number 2, where I made this big leap from being a real estate agent to being a real estate investor. And a lot of people think those are similar things, but they're not even remotely. And so I had to go make a huge investment in my own education and became an investor and just kind of took those same habits with me, had a plan and followed the plan and just got up and worked hard every day. And there's this little book that was really life-changing for me. I bet you've never heard of it. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you heard of this book?
Oh, no, not at all. Never.
Write it down. You don't want to forget that one. You got to get it. I highly recommend it. But there was that book, and that was like really a life-changing moment, like it has been for so many entrepreneurs. And, I got to interview Kiyosaki on my podcast, which was kind of cool to come full circle. But the 2 things that I really got out of there at that moment was, one was it gave me a new definition of what wealthy was, right? When I was in the music business, I thought wealthy was just having a lot of money in the bank. And he said, no, you define your wealth by how many calendar days you can live in the month before you run out of money, like your passive income, right? And
That's a really good repositioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I was like, wow, I never thought of it that way, but it made a lot of sense. So you wanted enough passive income to cover your expenses for the month. And then that income would start over again at the next month. Like, okay. And then the concept of passive income was the other part. Because I'm born and raised in the United States, speak English. I can take the word passive and income and put them together and kind of figure out what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But for it to be like an actual intention to pursue, that was like so far out and crazy to me. And so I took those 2 things and I was able to use his formula to escape the rat race, to get your expenses down as low as you could and get your passive income as high as you could. And in 3.5 years, I was free. I had escaped. Now, I wasn't rich by any means, and certainly hadn't hit my status that I had when I was in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
But having experienced both now, I think I liked the second one better, because even with, a healthy bank account in the music business, I still had to get up and go to work every day because, the bills were big, the revenue was big, but the bills were big. And it was just, it's just kind of like broke at a higher level, really. But having the ability, my favorite thing that it was described to me was, when the alarm clock goes off in the morning, you're free when you can roll out of bed or you can just roll over. And I kind of remember that day. I was living in downtown Los Angeles at the time. And I was like, I'm rolling over. And so that's kind of how that all happened with the investing part.
Yeah. Well, when you started investing, what did you start with? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, you have to have a lot of money saved. You have to have, you already have to have some wealth or somebody who can loan you money or get a bank loan. You have to have that level of credit to be able to start making investments. So what was that like for you when you transitioned from, making some commission off of sales to I'm going to be the person buying and investing now?
Great question. And I am the perfect example of you don't need money and you don't need credit, because I was still recovering from my bankruptcy. So I was completely unlendable. I had a little bit of cash, but when you live in the South Bay and you make a lot of money, you tend to spend a lot of money. So I wasn't good at saving it. So I didn't have a lot of resources. So when I made that investment in my education, there was a bunch of different tracks. This program I took, there were so many different routes I could have taken, but a lot of them did require those types of resources. So I just gravitated towards this one track that was based around creative acquisition strategies. And that was being able to negotiate with sellers and getting them to provide the financing for you or take over the existing financing that they already had on their properties.
Mm.
So it was negotiating seller financing and or taking over their property subject to the existing financing.
Hmm.
So I just embraced that because I couldn't step into a bank and I didn't really have the money to go out and buy them outright. And being in Los Angeles, houses they cost a lot there, and you can still implement those strategies there. But I discovered in the Midwest and the South, they had $50,000, $60,000 houses that would rent for $700, $800 a month.
Yep. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, give me 10. You know what I mean? It's like, that was like such a sticker shock, but the other direction. So I started doing it virtually from Los Angeles and was buying and selling houses in the Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, I mean, I grew up in Kansas, so I had real estate. And that was a
Mm,
great place to invest. And you can get triplexes and multifamily and all kinds of things really easily. And then Texas was also a great place to invest, much more so, to your point, than California, where, houses cost, the real estate here is very expensive,
yeah. Yeah.
whether the house is or not. So,
Yeah. When you're a disciple, I was just use that word. I don't know where that came from, but it feels right. Of rich dad, poor dad, and you're pursuing cash flow. Like that's pretty tough in California.
yeah. Yeah.
You need a lot of cash to cash flow in California, but in the Midwest and the South, not so much.
And at what point did this prompt your, starting the YouTube channel,
Got it.
moving to Vegas?
So I wrote a book called Do Over, and it was kind of a half autobiographical, half personal development about my time in the music business and how I made this transition and went into real estate and all the crap that happened in between. And so I was on a blog of some sort. I think it was Tim Ferriss. I wrote the 4 Hour Work Week, and he had a blog on like how to promote and self-publish your own book. And one of the steps was like out of the 10 steps, like step 9 was launch a podcast. And so this was in 2009. And when I read that, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And so I just followed all the steps like I always do. And I just launched it. And, even at the time, I'd tell people I was doing, they would ask me, what's a podcast? And I was like, nobody knew. This was not a household phrase like it is now. And all I did with my first 20 episodes was I just read one chapter of my book. So I read the 20 chapters of my book. And by the time I got to that 20th episode, I don't know if that worked today, but there was no like real examples or role models on what to do, And so I just did that. And I don't know, by the time I got to chapter 8, 9, the 8th or 9th episode, started to get lots of correspondence and a lot of feedback, and the book and the message was really resonating with people. And then I got to chapter 20 and I was like, oh, I'm out of chapters. What am I going to talk about next episode? And so I just kind of started winging it and just doing these little monologues. And, it was very personal development based. But my 2 reference points was either the music business or the real estate. So I was kind of juggling between those 2 things. And I would just get a lot of questions about the real estate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it turned into a real estate podcast. And so that happened. And then with passive income streams, I went to this one seminar because I was really into like diversifying. I'd had my real estate passive income. I was free that way. And now I was like, okay, let's see if we can figure this out, how to do it with something else. And I went to this one seminar on how to build a membership website is what it was called at the time. And so it's just like, you record videos and you put it behind a paywall. People pay you $97 a month or so to access whatever information you have behind. And that was revolutionary. That was like,
Oh,
amazing.
yeah. I mean, we're all doing that now, but
Yeah.
nobody at that time. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, the podcast combined with that, I'm like, that was like the dream business. And thank goodness I started it when I did, because I think I definitely had an advantage just because there was very little competition and very little noise out there doing that. But I did that. And he had said, the guy at the stage, he said, wealthy people get wealthy in one very specific way, is that they learn how to do something really, really well. And then they create multiple streams of income from that knowledge. So he kind of combined that with this membership website thing. And that was amazing. I mean, we charged $97 a month, and I put, I don't know, a dozen videos in there. And I don't know, I would say within 3 or 4 months, we probably had 200 people in there. And so I was like, well, this is cool. That's like 4 houses worth. And then there was one day I came home, and we were living in Pasadena at this time. And my wife said, it was the Monday after the Thanksgiving holiday. And my wife said, I got you a coaching client.
Oh.
And I was like, what do you mean?
You didn't know you were a coach.
That was not in the playbook. And I was so attracted to this membership website thing because I didn't have to talk to anybody. It was like
Yeah.
this automated thing. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do that. And she was like, well, it's too late. He already wired the money. And
And you're like, how much?
I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? He says, well, I don't know, but you're booked for 1 hour a day for the next 12 weeks or 1 hour a week for the next 12 weeks. And I was like, I don't even know what to say. Just tell him to do what you would do. I said, all right. So I did. And that client just went out and totally crushed it. And it was amazing. And we became friends and everything. And that just kind of turned into a coaching business totally accidentally, something I never wanted to do. And now I'm this podcaster, I'm the coach, and I have this YouTube channel. And I'm just like, how did I get here? But it's really is all accident.
I would disagree with that in some ways because I think it was really, you were continuously learning. You were open to new possibilities. You were doing what you knew, right? And learning and absorbing everything you could from the experts and becoming an expert. So it was a natural progression where today you hear a lot of people say, I don't know what to do. I'm going to be a coach, right? But they don't have this background, this history of building up their own business, knowing what worked, what didn't work, what the market will bear before they necessarily went into it.
Right. And I don't disagree with you, but it was just such a different time because there weren't a lot of examples out there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins was like,
there were not podcasters. There weren't these memberships and as much. And there certainly weren't a lot of coaches.
I mean, Tony Robbins was like the only coach out there. You know what I mean? Like, and still,
and he was still hustling. Yeah.
And most people didn't even know what he did. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, who is this guy on TV and why do I want what he has and what does he have? And so that was just a brand new experience. So I was just kind of followed where, the opportunities led me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you have a book called Escape?
Yeah, it's my brand new book. And I think this will be my last one. It's my fourth one. Yeah, I think I've said everything I want to say, unless I have some new discovery coming up. But this is like the flagship book that kind of encompassed everything that I know and how I perceive real estate now, because I don't really see real estate as real estate anymore. It's not a real estate podcast to me anymore. It's not a real estate YouTube channel. It's not a real estate book. It's a money book that uses real estate as the vehicle.
Nice.
As I've become older and wiser to see how our economic system works and the different resources and tools and opportunities that the average person has available to them, there's nothing that serves somebody in the society that we live in the way that real estate does as an investment vehicle. It just checks so many boxes, right? Just by, if you borrow money, you have the ability to leverage. Over time, inflation that's already here eats away at that debt. And then you take a small portion of someone else's resources to buy a large portion of someone else's. You take a small portion of your own resources to buy a large portion of someone else's. Then you get the appreciation in that investment. You can get cash flow from that investment. It's the final place where the last tax shelter for the average person. And then you put someone in it that's paying it and they buy it for you. Like the investment buys it itself. So it checks so many boxes of the perfect investment that's more of my mission now, is that I see it now where my grocery store manager, look how perfectly I brought this all the way back around. How the grocery store manager said it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth. And now there wasn't words to me anymore. It was like, now I understood why. And so that's really what I'm all about today, is taking that vehicle and giving people the ability to do better for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something we all need. I think no matter what's going on in the world, having people who are putting positivity and helping us learn new skills and learn ways to grow our wealth without having to depend on other people is really important. And not just financial wealth, but also well-being, right? Having that balance of, do I need to roll out of bed to work, or can I just roll over from day to day? So I do want to ask a question about real estate specifically. When you were starting to make your investments, did you look primarily at single family housing, multi-triplexes, units, Section 8? What kind of things really drove you? Or did you try a little bit of all of these different things and maybe some others to figure out, this is a good mix and maybe here's what I'm going to recommend to people?
Mm-hmm. I chose single families just because they were simple, right? I understood it. And, once I hit about, I don't know, my wife and I, we hit about 40, 45 houses, kind of this moment where we were acquiring our properties in the same way we always did. And we just came across an owner of a single family house who happened to have also an apartment building for sale. And so we were like, well, gosh, it's 40 units. It's in Memphis, Tennessee. And we've got 40 houses. Hey, this is just 40 doors underneath one roof. How different could it be? Right. And for us, it turned out to be considerably different. And trying to rehab a 40-unit building and manage it from, 10 states over, that was a bigger challenge than we anticipated. And, that was one of our big losses. We broke even financially, but it was about a year and a half of our time that we'd never get back. And so we did that a couple times, and I would do it again if I could find something like that locally where I could go put my hands on it and monitor it more closely. But yeah, just single families, it's just simple to me now. And I mean, it's just easy. And actually probably stay with single family houses now for totally different reasons, is that I truly believe that I don't think houses are going to be any more affordable than they are right now ever again. I think this is as good as it's going to get. And I think there's going to be a premium on single family houses, because for us to add more affordable housing to our society or our population, our country, it's not going to be single family houses. They're just too expensive to build and they can't sell them for enough. So I think you're going to see a lot of multifamily houses. You're going to see a lot of tiny houses. You're going to see a lot of, Elon Musk introduced his little $10,000 smart house. So you're going to see a lot of different ways that people live, and you're going to see more generations underneath one roof, kind of the way they do in Europe. And I think it's going to get to a point, and then the massive demand by the corporations that are taking all the houses, they're buying them all up. New home builders are building less and less to sell. They're building more and more to rent. And just because they see the value and what the demand is going to be for single family houses, I think in 10 years, if you own a house, you're going to be one of the elite in society, and people will look at you like, oh my God, you own your own house. Like, it's going to be such a special thing. I really think that's where it's going. I think we're going to become a nation of renters.
Mm-hmm.
So you can pay the rent or you can collect the rent. So I think you have that opportunity to make that decision right now.
Yeah. And how do you decide which markets you're going to buy in? For instance, I know some people who live in Ohio, and they've been saying that the prices are going up for houses, but they're still able to buy a lot of houses and rent them and cover the note really easily. So how do you identify these areas that you think are going to be still affordable for the average person to start investing, but also make money, not be too onerous in terms of, the renters that you have to deal with or the things that you have to fix? Because I live in a house that's in Redondo, probably built in the 50s. There are lots of things that I know. As soon as I moved in, I had to fix a whole bunch of pipes. I just know that there are a lot of other things that are going to start falling apart soon.
Totally.
But
Totally. I've got kind of two answers to that, because I definitely look at all the traditional stuff that a sophisticated, astute, wise investor would be looking at. Real estate rises wherever the people are going. So you really want to look at migration, right? And you can do that in a number of different ways. But where are the people moving to? Where are they migrating to? And I think a pattern that we'll see more and more over time as the properties on both coasts get more and more expensive, the population is going to move inland. They're going to move inward. And I think there's going to be a huge demand and a huge windfall for people that invest in the Midwest and the South.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen overnight, but I think that's the long term is a smart play. So I think that the economics all point to that. But if you're going to do it virtually and you're going to do it in a market that you don't actually live in, because I haven't seen a lot of my houses ever.
Oh.
I've seen pictures, but I haven't seen them. But the important part of that is how we pick our markets is where our best management relationships are. I think that is the key, and it's probably the most understated, underrated aspect of real estate, particularly if you want to live off of the cash flow. Because you could pick the ideal best market where everybody's going to be, and in the next 6 months, everyone's going to be in the city. But if you don't have a good property manager there, that's going to be a terrible experience for you. But you can pick a mediocre, middle of the road market. Kansas City, Missouri is one of our favorites.
That's where I had some real estate. Yeah.
St. Louis is a good one for us. Cleveland, Indianapolis, Birmingham, Huntsville, Alabama is great for us. But we're there because we have good property managers.
Yeah.
And it is kind of, there's nothing special or fancy about any of those markets. Alabama, maybe that's growing pretty quickly. But the other stuff is just kind of middle of the road. But if you have a good property manager, that's going to be a great experience for you. And so I think you definitely want to look at all the economic indicators and kind of choose that way. But once you've narrowed it down there, now your decision maker, the make or break decision is going to be based off the property management. And I think you should do as much due diligence on the property manager as you do the property you buy.
So what's your day-to-day look like now? You had mentioned earlier that you do one aspect, your wife does another aspect, that you're
Mhm.
actually even prepping homes for people to purchase. So can you walk us through what you do just personally, how much time
Sure.
you're spending on different areas of your businesses or
hmm
podcasts or YouTube or books? And then what does it look like for somebody to work with you and the different ways they can engage?
Super. Yeah, my typical day is, I've got my morning routine. I go to the gym, get my son ready to school, I take him to school. And then it's a good mix, and there's not a set schedule, but it's a good mix of the YouTube channel and the podcast because that brings in new clients for us. And then I'll go ahead and check my messages. And typically I'm calling sellers. So I'm really kind of focused on Vegas now and building more of our
Oh,
portfolio here. So we're local. So I do that. My wife takes care of pretty much all of her side of the business. There's very little overlap between us. In the evening, I respond to my students and clients who need help. So that's kind of how it looks most of the time and some variations of that. But yeah, if people wanted to work with us, there's kind of two different ways they can go ahead, and we still have a membership website where they can do their own
oh,
self-paced
okay.
learning, right? But if they want one-on-one support, they can get that as well. A good place to go is reiace.com. There's like 4 or 5 little questions there. They can answer those questions and then they can pick a time for us to hop on the phone and we'll see what's the best fit if there is one.
Nice. Okay. That makes it easy. What are some of the other things that you've really learned on this journey that you think people need to be cognizant of? Like if somebody is thinking, yes, I want to start doing this, what do they need to have gathered together to make sure that it's a right fit for them to work with you or just to start thinking about buying real estate?
Okay. I would think one would be there's 2 reasons that people don't invest in real estate or don't even take it on. Is one, they don't believe it'll work.
Hmm.
And or two, they don't believe that they will work.
Oh,
Right. So I think the first one is pretty easy to dispel because, real estate, it's produced more wealth for more people than anything else. So I think that's not always the one, but there's some weird myths and weird beliefs out there about real estate. But that's one reason. The second one is if you're going to work or not. So we know it works. So I would say don't even, if it's something I'm going to dip my toe in the water and try it for 90 days to see what happens. If that's the mindset, I wouldn't even get started because sometimes you won't get any results in 90 days.
yeah.
A lot of people do. A lot of people
Hmm.
get a deal in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
But I've got clients that, it took them a year to get their first deal, but then they got 15 deals in the next 3 months right after that. So it's a long-term play. It's a commitment. It's not just a hobby and let's see how this is going to work. There's other things you could probably do that would be less frustrating, right? But nothing that would give the type of rewards this would give. So I think that's it. Like just to make the decision first. Like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm willing to give it, a year or two. And that's because it's what I really want to do. I think that's the big, big decision first. The second thing is, and this would go for any entrepreneurial endeavor, I think that I wish I would have known much earlier, being very intentional about creating your environment and the people
Mm.
you connect with, the people you associate with. I think
Yes.
that's such a hack for success. I wish we would have been taught that in high school because I could have really expedited some things and probably been somewhere very different in my life at this moment. But not that I have regrets where I'm at, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you just find yourself in different conversations where different ideas are created, different types of thinking. If you go and find yourself in a community of a bunch of people doing what you want to do, you don't get your crazy ideas laughed at. You don't get people telling that you can't do it or discouraging you and go, hey, why don't you get a backup plan going, right? That you might get from your friends and family. You got a plan B just in case this doesn't work? Like you don't get that. So you get in those conversations and things are possible because you're witnessing it. And then you've got access to the resources and the connection and the knowledge to pull it off and put it all together. So I don't think that your network and your community can be even remotely underestimated. And so those will be like the 2 things. Make a decision and then choose a community. And once you've got that, then just attach yourself to somebody that's doing what you want to do, that's living the life that you want to lead. And I think just another good strategy is if you do what they do, there's a good chance you're going to get what they got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great advice. I want to ask about the complexity of having real estate in different states. Because every state has different restrictions, different tax laws, property taxes. So do you have to have an individual LLC for each state? Or you will have one umbrella company? I know this is getting into some of the nitty gritty.
That's okay. I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. So how we structure ours is we have all of our LLCs are in our state in Vegas and in Nevada because we live here. Okay? Don't fall for that scam, especially if you live in California. That's going to backfire on you. And if you know, like you get the traveling roadshow will come through Los Angeles and say, hey, you can avoid all these taxes and everything by incorporating in Nevada.
Right.
California will find you. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't play that game.
They will get their money.
Yes. The state franchise tax board they're ruthless. Sounds like a nice little name, but I'd call them the mob. But yeah, they're ruthless. So don't do that. But we have all of our stuff here because we operate our business here. But then if we own real estate, we'll have the LLC registered in that state. Okay. So that's how we do it. I'm sure there's probably more sophisticated strategy you can do, but we've never had a need for anything more sophisticated than that.
Nice.
So that's how we operate with our legalities. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Because I know, there are people who are listening to our business owners who might be thinking about whether it's real estate or not, opening up businesses in other states. And these are all things that you have to consider in just as the course of doing business.
We're in probably 10 different markets, which probably covers about 6 different states, I guess. But we got to pay taxes in all those states on the stuff the business that we conduct there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's next? What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself going? You and your wife, your family, are you going to kind of get out of the day to day?
At 40, I essentially retired for 30 days.
Oh.
I thought I was going to retire forever because it was when I escaped the rat race. What's that again?
And then you got bored?
Yeah. And this is what happened because I thought that's what I always wanted. That was always the dream. I want to get to the point where I don't have to do anything as fast as possible. And I got there, right? And, you can only watch so many movies. You can only go to the gym so often. You can only hit so many golf balls at the driving range. You can only go to so many happy hours before and it's actually kind of a lonely existence because everyone still has to go to work.
Yeah.
And so I escaped the rat race and did that, like I said, in 3.5, 4 years and retired for 30 days. And was just like, you know what? All right, this is what it is. Let's go for the next thing. So just keep on going. So I went and started a business and got employees and overhead and everything. And what do you call it? COVID was really tough on us, our business, because we were doing a lot of live events. And when most of your revenue comes from live events and they shut down live events, it's kind of hard to make money. So we were still licking some wounds and healing from that and replenishing. And right now, most of my thoughts over the next 4 or 5 years are bringing most of my investments from the other states and redeploying here in Las Vegas and Nevada.
Nice.
So that's kind of what I'm doing over the next 3 or 4 years.
Fantastic.
Yep.
This has been really fun. You're obviously really good at speaking and sharing your story and your journey and information that people could actually really use.
Oh, thank you.
I thank you for that. We will link to all the things, your website, yourself. Is the best way for people to get in touch with you to do that little survey and then to...
They could do that, or, you're listening to a podcast. We have the Epic Real Estate Investing Podcast. It's the longest running real estate podcast on the interwebs. And then the YouTube channel, and there's all kinds of links and stuff like that. And just epicrealestate.com is the website. So you'll find us there.
Fantastic. And my last question, Matt, is do you have a favorite quote, family motto, verse, poem, words that help you continue to strive, stay motivated, stay positive, do your best every day?
There's one from Mark Twain I like a lot where learn from other people's mistakes because you won't be here long enough to make them all on your own.
Wow.
So I like that one.
Yeah.
And then I use this with my students a lot because I see them really struggling with getting ready to get ready. And it's a Martin Luther King quote where he says, you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. And I love that one too, because, when I'm working with somebody and real estate is a brand new thing for them, they really feel like they can't take that first step until they see what's on step 10 because they're terrified. And I just kind of encourage them, and whether it's real estate or anything else that you aspire to, just travel as far as you can see. And when you get there, you'll see further, right? So just take the first step. If you take the first step, you know how much easier step 2 is from step 1 than step 0? Like, so just those are the two things that kind of, I don't know, those always come first to mind when I'm asked that.
Amazing. Well, Matt Theriault of Epic Real Estate, I'm looking forward to reading your book, your final of your 4, and continuing to learn from you. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We are in Q4 of 2024. I think everybody's kind of doing some soul searching, looking at what can we do next year to make our lives better, to make our investments count, to see what's, see the light at the end of the tunnel, not feel like we're just running on a treadmill.
Yep. I think we're here a day after the election, whether you agree or not. I think it's going to be a pro-business administration. And as of today, right now, they just dropped the interest rates again. I think 2025 is going to hold a lot of opportunity for business and investments.
Okay. You heard it here first. Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share their journey, their story, and some helpful hints, tips, and tricks to make your life and your business a little better every day. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.